Hi, everyone, and welcome to She Plays the podcast. I am super excited to be joined today by Miss Harvey herself, professional gamer. She's joining us from Canada. I'm so excited to have you on the pod.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm so excited. I feel like esports and gaming has been a genre that I'm so excited to learn more about, and so I'm thrilled that you have joined us.
Yay, I'm excited too.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear first, like how you got into this. I mean, where were you, growing up? Were you a gamer? And then professional, when did you make that switch?
Yeah, I think that most people look at esports now and they say like, "Oh, like it's such a big industry, it's so cool, like, I want to be part of it." But when we joined, I'm 34, when I joined, it was not cool at all. It was actually extremely underground. So I kind of was just playing video games my whole life, but I was doing tons of other things. And when I started really focusing on Counter-Strike, I kept doing the other things. So I wouldn't really tell my friends that I would go game at a LAN center or anything. And eventually, slowly, I faded away from these friends. Instead of going to skate parks, I would like go to LAN centers, and I just like ended up always gaming, I think around 17, 18. So that was in 2003 and 4, and that was not cool, like I mentioned. And there was no such thing as esports, and even competitive gaming was kind of like, you paid to go to World Cups because it was so cool. You wanted to pay to go there. A little bit like, I would say, I'm trying to compare it to something, but maybe like poker. When you start, you kind of like pay your way there. So I guess it was a little bit like that before everyone. There was no sponsor or anything, and then we or very little at least. And then for I think I would say for 10 years, it was me paying a lot of it, sometimes sponsors flying me or something, but there's definitely no salaries, that's for sure. So I continued my studies. I have a bachelor in architecture and a master in video game design, and then I worked at Ubisoft as a game designer. And then in 2016, I think I could have started doing it full time in 2013, but I still wanted to continue my video game career, design. And then I think in 2016 or 15, I was like, okay, I want to go full time and see where that leads me. So I jumped, and I've been full time in esports since.
That's awesome. Do you feel like your appreciation and passion for video game design makes you appreciate more, or do you find things in a game and you're like, if only this
Yes. I don't think I can play a game now and truly say this game is perfect or truly say this game is shit. Like, I'm always finding good and bad things and things I would have done differently, or things that I like, oh, that was so good. I've never seen this before, even in the worst game now. So it definitely changes the way I play games, but it also changes, I would say, the way I designed. Being a pro gamer, I think I was extremely meticulous on anything gameplay controls, like the smoothness, being stuck somewhere in stuff. That was something that I was really, really wishing for. I worked also when I started my design career. I worked on Prince of Persia, which is like one of the most known like smooth flow games. So it was also like a double down on my brain that like gameplay and experience. If you want everything else to take into account, like your mood, the universe, and whatnot. If you're getting stuck on the basic in the game with the control and the way the character moves and whatnot, you won't even get to having the experience you want. So it's been very interesting, and I think it made me a better designer.
That's awesome. So, and was it just by being a staple really in this underground community as it started getting more popular? Is that then where, yeah, like how do you find sponsors? Is it just like through your play, or is it the community just kept growing and people started to notice?
No, actually, for the longest time, I had to knock that doors. Like, I create like a sponsorship and a marketing plan, and I was like 18, and I was literally knocking on every door I could, like my local pizzeria, my uncles who own a company, I was knocking everywhere, and I would say like probably 90% of them were no's. 1% of them were like, oh, this is cool, but maybe later. And then like once in a blue mood, you'd get someone that would be like, oh, I can give you like $200. And you're like, yeah, but like $200 is nothing, right? For a plane ticket, or that's nothing, especially we're all from Quebec at the time. So like $200, you don't even get to Toronto from Quebec. So it's like, it was pretty difficult. I'm not gonna lie. Like I spent, back then there wasn't any like a competition every weekend. So it was like once a year, there's like a big World Cup. So I spent most of the year looking for sponsor to go to the World Cup for the whole team. So it was really difficult to
You know,
get
18
like
years
10
old.
grand.
Yeah, that's amazing that you were such entrepreneurial spirit, even of like, yeah, I got to create a plan. I got to go out and meet people. I mean, that's incredible.
There was no other, like we didn't have that. Like me, I could work and get the money, but my teammates, you know, a lot of them were younger and whatnot. And there was no like stream like today, or like donation or Kickstarter. Like that wasn't a thing. Like, there was no way to make money other than work, or having sponsors. So, and I had to do what I had to do.
Yeah, I was going to ask because Twitch just became, you know, a thing a couple years ago. So yeah, no one could really watch you or learn about you unless they were at the event, I guess.
Yeah, it was pretty difficult. You found ways to like log in the game, and you had like the IP and you connect to the IP server, but it was super difficult. Like I had to like create a document for my parents to understand how to watch me, and someone had to email them like the IP to connect, you know. So it was really heavy. So Twitch definitely changed everything, especially for my family and friends, which they just had to click on a link and then they could like follow a tournament happening in Paris. The first time my mom saw my face, you know, when I was gaming and in between the rounds, like yelling, and she couldn't believe it, right? She was just like, oh my God, we saw your face in between the rounds. And like, for years she followed me. For 10 years she followed me, and all she could hear is just the game sounds, right? So it was
That's
pretty awesome.
That is cool. So where was your first world championship?
It was in 2007 in Paris. And this was my third World Cup. And I joined the team. So in 2005, I was on Team Canada. In 2006, I joined Team USA, who won 2005. And we were like kind of the queens, but we got there and we got knocked out in semis. It was a different format than today. It was like one game and you're out. And honestly, it was kind of a shock, because we beat that team earlier in the tournament pretty like convincingly. I think we outplayed ourselves. We got into a fight during the game between the players.
Oh, no.
So that was pretty bad. But then the next year we came back and we won 2007. I moved to France. USA won 2008. I finished second in 2008. 2009, there's no World Cup. We won 2010. We won 2011. We won 2012. So then after that, it was kind of a nice dynasty.
That's awesome. Very cool. And so you said the Queens, was it an all-female team?
Yeah.
Wow.
All female teams. We're playing in the World Cups in most of the women events. There's only like 1 or 2 women events throughout the year. So that's where we won.
But are there some that are like, you know, any gender can play?
Yeah, every other tournament.
Okay.
Any gender. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's cool. So, and I'm curious too, because I do want to get into the, you know, gender discrimination that exists there. But I'm curious if you could describe the first World Cup that you went to and like last year's, what has just skyrocketed and changed?
Well, I think that there was more grassroots people going to the World Cups before. Like, especially in the women's circuit, there's like 24 women teams that had to qualify to get there. So you got there and it was like a huge room of all the teams playing each other. And the finals were on stage, but throughout the competition, you're just like, you were playing behind the scene and everyone was kind of hanging out, and they were in big places because they had to fit the places. But instead of being like all for fans in one game, they were like all for their players. And then the fans were kind of just around and whatever. And now it's kind of completely different. It's arenas like you see for any sports. They have a stage, and most of the games are played on stages. And then behind the scene, you have sometimes like the prelims and whatnot. But so it's not the same camaraderie, I would say. It's like really professional. People don't really talk to each other much. Like you go and get there when it's your game, and you have like sometimes practice room, but it's a lot more serious. I would say for the better, but it's like oh yeah, I would say for the better. Just because we needed to be more serious. It was kind of a mess before. But at the same time, it's fun to see sometimes tournaments are trying to be more different. Like there's tournaments you see that are like in houses so that just like people can hang out and there's no fans, you know. So you're trying to switch it up a little bit. So I've never done the tournaments in the houses, but you can watch it from home and they look quite fun.
And what's the prize money difference from early in the day to now?
For the women's circuit, it's not like we went from like maybe 15, well, the prize pool of maybe like 50 grand to a prize pool of like 100 grand or sometimes. So it's 30 to 100 the difference, I would say, in the women's circuit. So it's like not that much. But for the male circuit, we went from almost the same price pool, like 30 or 50 grand, to like millions, right?
Wow.
So the male, I say male circuit, it's the general circuit.
Okay.
There's like no female. But yeah, so it's been the growth of women in esports hasn't been that great, but the growth of esports has been pretty spectacular.
Yeah, so let's dive into a little bit about the gender inequality that exists there. I think I read way back in the day, I don't know what the number is now, but it's like 5% of gamers are women or professional gamers. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but yeah, talk a little bit about what you noticed when you started, getting into it, and then want to hear about you've made moves and like put things into action to help that change. So I'd love to hear all about that.
Yeah, for sure. So in general gaming, so if you compare, like, for example, the general gaming players in Canada, there's a stats that came out recently. In the last 2 years, it's like 50-50. In the US, it's kind of similar. In Canada, actually, women won like 51-49, but I think in the US, it's pretty even. Um, and and that's awesome, but it doesn't lead to players playing in esports, like women being involved in esports. There's still like this gate between competitors and casual players. There's also a gate, I think, in esports, not as viewers. I think that Twitch has like 30% women, and if you go to tournaments, there's more and more women in the stadium, uh, like 20 to 30% in stadiums are women. So that's already like pretty big news, but in the play field, it's not. And for me, it's like a lot of factors. Whether it has to do with toxicity, whether it has to do with um, habits too, like for a minor group to break into like a core, really knit group, which professional gaming kind of is. It's difficult. Also, you can't just become a professional like this, right? You have to train, you have to get good, and that takes years usually. So for these women to kind of jump into esports and then grind and then get at the top, they mostly give up before that because of all the problems in between, right? Whether it's toxicity, whether it's like opportunities, whatever that is. So we're at that state where even though esports blossomed, women are more involved in gaming than ever. We still can't find women gaming competing at the top, right? So we are struggling, and we need people to take a stand. We need organizations to want to support women in their growth, even if they're not the best. We need sponsors to do the same as well. And we need everyone to do it, not just for visibility and clout, but also like truly caring that women can grow and can compete. and that takes years to achieve. So for a sponsor to say like, hey, we're on board, it's pretty difficult. But there's some great news, like recently, like, well, we've had CLG Red for the last 5 years, which is our women division of esports at CLG. There's teams like Dignitas, Genji, Cloud9. You know, they're starting to invest, or they've been investing into women. And I always say it's a choice, right? It's a choice because you could just support women and just say, oh, yeah, we love women, but you don't put your money where your mouth is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say I'm proud of seeing these orgs kind of jump in, but they're still too little.
Are there any brands that specifically sponsor women that we could give a shout out to here? That's just off the top.
Well, for years we were sponsored by Intel, and they sponsored exclusively the women's division on CLG, and on the team I had, United. So I was pretty proud of them. Genji has a Bumble, and I think that Cloud9 has AT&T that supports the women team. I would say that there's also Zowie, the company that makes the mouses and the keyboards and a little bit everything, from Singapore. They also support women like crazy. They create like women's event and tournaments and they sponsor teams. So I would say that. And honestly, I'm so sorry, I'm probably forgetting sponsors.
You're good. That was a random question.
Yeah, those are the ones that I'm thinking about.
Yeah, well, as we know too, the fandom of women's sports are fiercely loyal. And so hearing brands that sponsor their athletes or leagues, they get after it. But they're
Newegg too at CLG right now. We've been sponsored by Newegg for a year, and they do a lot for the women's division. They sponsor the broadcasts for women and stuff like that.
Awesome. And if you think of any more after, put it my way and we'll put it in the show notes. Okay. So everyone can go to the show notes and buy from companies that support women gamers. That's awesome. So real quick, before we head off, I do want to hear about Miss Clicks, because it was a community you created, right?
Yeah, with 3 other women back in 2013. It lasted about 5 years, and it was kind of before, there's a lot of hype right now about women and support, and there's a lot of orgs and just like people taking care of women or more than before. So with any key and whatnot, there's like a lot of people that are taking that space. But back in 2012, 13, I felt that there was a need for women to unite. This was when I had my own women esports team, United, and we were winning World Cups. And I was like, I think we're not doing enough. I want also for people that are not professional gamers or not Counter-Strike players to like feel that they can belong to a community. So we created Misclicks, which was a community, a safe space for women, trans, LGBTQ, people of color, like just people that felt that they didn't have a place to kind of learn about gaming and belong and meet up at events and just kind of get to know each other. And the community reached out. We had thousands of people watching our shows, where we were 4 girls just learning about Dungeon and Dragon. Like we've never done it before, and we all learned it on a show with people at home. We had gatherings at every big gaming event. We had volunteers. Like it was a really awesome venture, but unfortunately, like as this grew, our career grew, and that was not really easy to get money for these kind of things then. So after 5 years, kind of had to shut it down just because we didn't have time anymore as individual. And I was at Twitch. Jen was launching Rainbow Six. I was going full time, like I mentioned, in esports as a competitor. So we kind of all had our own crazy things going on, and we felt we couldn't do it justice. So we kind of shut down the venture. But we continue talking about that mission everywhere. Yeah. All of us, and we still are super close girlfriends. So it's been quite awesome.
Well, and you built something that gave a platform for people to keep growing, and now it is growing. So,
a lot of people that were involved in Misclicks as volunteers went on that work, Twitch, game companies, so it's been quite awesome to see them blossom from just like a community member that watches our show to a
Yeah.
producer at Twitch. Like that's kind of great to see.
Absolutely. That is cool. That's really cool. Well, the last question I'll ask is just where do you see esports going in the next, I mean, it's growing so fast. Let's just say like the next 2 years. And where do you hope women's gaming continues to grow?
I think that there's a couple of things I want to see esports get involved with. There's a shift into making a difference in the last year or two, which is pretty much 100% my role at CLG. So I'm looking forward to what we can do together. And also, I would like to see um, a better business model for esports. I think that right now there's a lot of money being thrown and very little return. So if we could find a way to have a better business model, that'd be great. I think then venture capital and just like sponsorship, because that's a very risky model.
Hmm.
So hopefully we can find a way to do better on that. So I wish us that so we can stabilize income and we can make sure that players are supported for a long time. Because right now, it's a 1-year contract and you don't know if you're going to be there the next one. And it's a little different than in regular sports where a player signs for 10 years and he knows he's good. So, um, so I would say that. And for women, well, the more that orgs and sponsors push women into competing at a highest level, even if it's supporting them when they're at the bottom and kind of figuring out with them along the way, it creates an example, it creates stability, it creates support for these women to kind of be able to get there. And I think that's really important. It's just like any diversity and any minority. For them to be just as good as the current people in place, which usually are white male, you have to give them a shot when they're not at the top, or else they will never get to the white male's experience because these guys have been there securing the top forever. So it takes people to support difference to for them to get that experience and eventually get at the top and inspire others to do the same.
That's awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you again for joining us. Where can people find you and follow you?
Yeah, I'm everywhere at MISSHARVEY. Pretty much your favorite social media. I'm there, but my favorite is Instagram stories and Twitch and YouTube, and also Discord. Actually, come on my Discord if you want to chat about these kind of things. I'm chatting with my community every day, even if I'm not streaming.
Awesome. Well, we will put every link that we can find in our show notes. So everyone go check it out. And Stephanie, just thanks so much for joining today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you have a little puppy coming.
Yeah.
Cutie.